4CRB now presents Legal Matters, proudly brought to you by Bell and Senior Lawyers. Call them today for all your legal needs on 07 55 32 8777. This program provides general legal information only. It's not personal legal advice. Everyone's situation is different, so please seek independent advice for your own circumstances.
And as the promo says, it's a very good morning to Andrew Bell from Bell and Senior Lawyers.
Good morning, Colin. Hope you had a great Easter.
I had a great Easter. How about you?
Wonderful. Spending time with the family, it's always good.
It is. It never seems long enough, though. We get a 2-day weekend, we move into 4 days, and you sit there and get to the Monday and go, where did that go?
Well, the Tuesdays today, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, this is your opportunity to get some free legal advice live on air. All you need to do is give us a call this morning between now and 9:30 on 0755 208888, and Andrew will answer your question live on air. Do not leave it to the end of the program because you get caught out and we end up having to ask you to ring in next week. So give us a call straight away, 0755 208888. And last week we were talking about QCAT, and we didn't get to the end of the interview because your wonderful phone calls did come in, so we thought we'd finish that discussion. We might do a synopsis or a run through what we got over last week, and we might start with what is QCAT and what does it mean to the listeners?
Yeah, so QCAT, as we explained, is the Queensland Civil and Administrative Tribunal, and I managed to get it out this time, but everyone calls it QCAT. It replaced about 22 different tribunals in 2009, so there used to be different things for residential tenancies, small claims court, all sorts of other bits and pieces, and they all fit under one uniform umbrella of QCAT. And the idea for that was that it was more efficient and faster and easier for people to deal with. So when you have a dispute in Queensland for a number of things, be them tenancy disputes, building defects, body corporate arguments, fence and tree disputes, debt recovery up to $25,000 or guardianship, then QCAT's the place to go.
Perfect. And you can represent yourself. You don't need a solicitor. Is that correct?
That's entirely correct. You can apply to have legal representation, but the system's set up that it's a bit easier to navigate the labyrinth of legal terms and just present your case in an honest and straightforward way.
Well, why don't we quickly rip through the run through?
Well, I had two things from last week.
Oh, okay.
So we had
great.
George rung in last week and talked about his colorbond fence getting knocked over by his tree, and I said, well, if it's your tree, then you're liable. Now that's the typical way that we consider these things, but technically, if a tree falls on your neighbour's property and it was in perfect health, then you're not liable. Everyone's equally liable. The problem you have is proving that a tree that just fell over or just dropped limbs actually was in good health, and that's up to you to prove. So nearly always it works out that the owner of the tree is liable. And the other one that we had last week is that we had a listener call in asking about getting a copy of a will. And I suggested nicely that you contact the executor or the solicitor and ask them to send you a copy. Well, technically you have the right to do so. But normally in most legal correspondence, it's easier to ask nicely first and then follow up with any threats or demand your rights later than just go in.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a rule of life. Let's start with our first caller. It is a very good morning to Brett. Brett, ask your question of Andrew.
Good morning, Andrew. Good morning, guys. I had a question. I guess it's an extension to what you were just mentioning regarding trees over fences. My next-door neighbour has the most humongous screening row of bamboo growing in his place, and it's in excess of 35 metres tall, and it's pressed right up against our fence line. Now, where I live on Eagle Heights, it actually detracts from our resale price because it's blocking the view of beautiful Gold Coast, which is such a feature of our house. It's designed all windows facing that direction, right? So I'm wondering, do I have any leg to stand on with the council in terms of requesting some kind of demand to have that at least hedged, given it's not going to damage any of my property, or is it a hazard? It's merely just shading both of our yards. In fact, all of his solar panels are in the dark for half of the day, and it really takes about a third of my yard. Nothing can grow there. It's just all mulch, etc. So I'm wondering if there's anything I can really do, or not really, given it's not going to impact my property, or is in any danger whatsoever.
If there's no danger and it's not a fire hazard, then you don't really, and it's not damaging the fence, then you don't really have a leg to stand on. You can ask. Right. Well, we would recommend that you talk to them, offer to pay for the arborist to come and give them a trim, but unfortunately, there's nothing you can do to force them into reducing the height.
If I call it a fire hazard, given it is so high, and if there was an bushfire racing up the mountain, for example, and it would set that alight like a torch, which would blow embers all over my wooden cladded house, would there need to be a distance from my house to be in consideration for that?
Well, I don't know all of that off the top of my head, but I do know that fire management plans in rural areas are important and are the purview of council, who can inspect things, and they can order that brush be collected or undergrowth be removed on the basis of fire needs. So you might be able to contact them and assess it depending on the situation.
Sounds like, Andrew, I need to buy him a bottle of scotch and have a good old chat.
Yeah, I think you've got a great argument there for, your solar panels are in shade for half of the day,
Correct.
mate. You could be saving a few more dollars.
Exactly, yeah. All right, thanks, guys. That helps.
Thank you. All right. Well, if you'd like to ask a question just like Brett did, all you need to do is give us a call on 0755 208888. We'd love to hear from you. Do not leave it to the end of the show. Now, going back to our example, I had a bit of a question. What if we had a nasty storm like we did have up there on Mount Tamborine, or, God forbid, a cyclone that did head down late last year, knocked over a perfectly healthy tree? It's one of those arguments that it could go one way or another.
No, I think if it was a perfectly healthy tree and it was the cyclone that knocked it down and it wasn't the failure of anyone to maintain the tree, then I think you would find if it did bust the fence, that both sides would be ordered in QCAT to be able to pay for it.
Perfect. It's interesting that, because you hear that example, you hear the example of the gentleman who just phoned in, and it is very much, it swings and roundabouts and, hey, how about you look after me and I'll look after you type thing.
Absolutely, and it all depends, and trees are one of the most common things that come up in QCAT as well. No one really directs where they grow, and they cause all sorts of unintended consequences, from blocking up people's gutters to roots breaking people's pools and impacting on the precious fences. And everyone has a very strong opinion about whose tree it is and who should bear the responsibility. We'll
quickly run through the questions of last week. Is it actually faster than court?
It is faster than court, but as we said last week, I had checked, and the timing can still be between 1 and 2 years from when you put in your application to when it gets solved. It used to be much faster, but I think people latched on to how good QCAT was, and however, there are some circumstances, for example, tenancy disputes, where you can put in, if you're about to get an eviction, you can put in an emergency application to QCAT, and they do hear them quite quickly.
Nice. All right, it is a very good morning to Janine. Good morning, Janine. Ask your question of Andrew.
Yes, good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
My name's Jeannie. I was just wondering, we did our will, say about 54 years ago, back in Bathurst, where we came from, and it was through McIntosh McPhillamy. Now, I don't think they're there anymore, and we had a copy, and I don't really know where it is. I guess if I really searched the place, I'd find it, but should we do another one?
Well, I would recommend that you either locate the will or do another one. You need an original for it to be valid. So if you have any concerns about that firm and where it is, you can contact the Law Society, and they track, and that would be the Law Society of New South Wales if it was in Bathurst. However, I would suspect in 54 years that a lot of such circumstances have changed, And it is important that your will is up to date and reflects current situations, including who you want to be for your executors, your family members who are still around the property that you own. If you do create another will, it will supplant the other one, so you don't need to find it. So probably consider that, or go to the Law Society in New South Wales and see if they can track who might be holding on to the will. I know in my practice we have wills that have been done over 30 years ago from about 3 or 4 firms before the current iteration that we have at the moment. So it is possible that it is still being held by someone, but 54 years in New South Wales, it's probably time for a checkup.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks a lot for your help.
Good luck.
Thank you, Jeannie. All right, 0755 208888 is the number. If you'd like a little bit of free legal advice this morning, we have 15 minutes in the program. Do not leave it to the last minute. We'd love to hear from you. 0755 208888. All right, we might move into, if I win at QCAT, do I get my legal costs back?
If you win at QCAT, no, you don't get your legal costs back, and that's often something that becomes a shock to people. So because it's designed to be easier, there's one flat application fee to go in. The person who pays the application fee generally pays it once, and if win, lose or draw, they don't get that back. Occasionally it can be ordered. But the idea is that it's simple. You go in, everyone knows what to expect. We're not looking high stakes here. But this is where the economics come in. If you do want to engage a lawyer to help you, and definitely lawyers can help you, you need to look at what everything's worth. If you're going for $5,000 and you're going to spend $3,000 on a solicitor to help you, and you don't get that back, you're really only $2,000 up. So it may be worth writing something and getting some advice from a legal centre, or just a one-off. Ask a solicitor, can they have a look at the documents that you're ready to go with and give you some advice for an hour, rather than get them to do everything yourself. QCAT is geared up to be DIY. If you go into the QCAT registry, they have pamphlets about how to do things. They have a very informative website about how to fill in the forms. There's other guides and things that you can access through the show page here about how to fill in and work with QCAT. But yes, if you have legal costs and you are legally represented and go to QCAT and win, well, you don't get those costs back.
All right. Well, let's move on to Rod now. It is a very good morning to Rod. Rod, ask your question of Andrew.
Well, Andrew, Paul, happy Tuesday to you.
Same to you.
Andrew, many years ago, I'm getting my age a bit with you now. Many years ago, the old rule was if trees were hanging over the neighbour's fence, it was their responsibility to cut them down and throw them back over the owner of the trees fence without damaging anything, and it was their responsibility then, or mine, to take it away. Is that still the case?
So that law called self-abatement does still exist. It's definitely not recommended. The recommendation is to get an order from QCAT to get those trees trimmed. There are things where you can do where you can spend up to a certain amount. I believe it's $500 and ask for that to be paid. But the definite recommendation from QCAT is not to do it yourself. However, my understanding is the law still stands that you can remove branches on your side and gently return them on the other side. But if you do damage to the tree, or do damage where you throw the limbs back over the other side, then you could find yourself in trouble. So it's probably best to talk to the neighbour first.
Yes, I've tried. I've actually made contact. Just very quickly, I have made contact with the neighbour. No response. I own the trees, and they are hanging over.
Oh, you own the trees. Okay.
I own the trees, and they're hanging over next door neighbours, and they are disrupting some of the units with the sun that blocks the sun. And I'm waiting for them to come along and say, well, right, let's cut them down and we'll throw them back to you, Rod. But I don't know what the rules are.
Well, it's not their responsibility to. It's something that they could optionally do. Likewise, you could go over there and trim them yourself. And as long as you're not asked to leave, you're probably not committing an act of trespass.
So if it was a legal issue, I'm responsible.
You own the tree, you're responsible for the tree. However, if it's on their property, they are within their rights typically to be able to chop limbs off if they want to. But they're not obliged to.
And if they don't chop them, sorry, Andrew, and if they don't chop them off, then it's really my responsibility.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. Well done. Thank you sincerely. Good on you.
No worries.
Good on you, Rod. Thank you very much for the call. All right, 0755208888 is the number to call to get a little bit of free legal advice this Tuesday morning. 10 minutes left in the show. Do not leave it too much longer. And moving on with our questions on QCAT. So, if I win, I could still be out of pocket.
Absolutely. So the example I gave you before, if you spent $3,000 and you got awarded $2,000, then you're still going to be down if you win. You may also have enforcement costs afterwards. If you do win at QCAT, QCAT don't enforce their own orders. So you need to get it registered in the Magistrates Court. And then there's a series of processes to go down there to get your money back, which might involve engaging a bailiff or making someone bankrupt if it's over $10,000. And typically you wear the costs of that, which you can then recover out of any money that you subsequently get from the person that you were suing.
Okay, so it's one of those calculated risks, let's call it. All right, what does it cost to go to QCAT?
Okay, well, QCAT has a sliding set of fees, which are available on their website, but somewhere between $60 and $250 for the filing fee for those debt claims, and different amounts for other bits and pieces. And if you are in hardship, if you are a pensioner or you don't have the funds, then you can apply when you're applying to QCAT for the matter for hardship, and you may actually end up not out of pocket at all.
Okay, 0755208888 is the number to get a little bit of free legal advice this morning from Andrew Bell from Bell and Senior Lawyers. We'd love to hear from you. Do not leave it too much longer. We might go to a message from our sponsor.
Wills, probate, powers of attorney or property matters. Legal issues don't need to feel overwhelming. Call our trusted sponsors, Bell and Senior Lawyers. They explain everything in plain English and guide you through every step of the way. For caring, experienced advice, phone 07 5532 3133 or head to bellsenior.com.au today. Bell and Senior Lawyers, making legal matters simple.
All right, this is a Talkback program. We'd love to hear from you. Final 9 minutes of the program, 0755208888 is the number. And please give us a call right now. All right, we're speaking about QCAT this morning, and the next question is, how many people win and then give up because they don't know what to do next?
Well, the QCAT process is quite simple and it's quite well documented, but once you finish, as we said, then it's up to you to enforce the order. And it's quite a lot of people give up then, because then you're actually going through a court process, not the tribunal process. So they've done all the hard work, prepared and won, and then someone just ignores the order. So now you have to go to the Magistrates Court enforcement procedures, and depending on what the order is, that may take you another 6 months to get where you want to go. My advice would be not to give up. Seek out advice if you need it. The community legal centres often deal with these sorts of things about what to do next, but if you have the piece of paper in hand, you've got typically up to 6 years to enforce the QCAT decision.
Yeah, wow. All right, and what if someone just ignores the QCAT application completely?
So what happens with QCAT is you put in your application to QCAT, you pay the application fee, and then you need to do what's called service. So you need to either, if it's a business, go to the place of business or the house, or make sure it's actually been brought to someone's attention. And then you go back to QCAT and fill in a form called an affidavit of service that actually proves that they've got it. And that's what really kicks off the whole process. If they're not aware of it and you haven't sent to them, it doesn't really count. But if you have applied to QCAT, for most matters, they've got 28 days to put in a defence. If they don't put in a defence, which can be that this is wrong, this isn't me, this is another person, I didn't do it, etc., after that 28 days, you can apply to QCAT for what's called a default judgment. And that means that the decision has been made in the absence of the other person. QCAT will make sure your claim looks reasonable, assess it on its merits without the input from the other side, and then make a decision most likely in your favour. So it's important to watch those dates.
All right, we're going to a caller now. Good morning to John. John, ask your question of Andrew.
Yeah, John, has QCAT got any additional uses apart from. Have they got the? Can they take your estate off you personally?
Can you give me some more context? What do you mean? So
I'm going back to the Gold Coast Hospital. So the story went that that if they didn't put my wife into a nursing home, they would take her estate off her. Would that be correct?
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be correct. So QCAT can give what's called guardianship orders, either to a loved one or to the Queensland trustee, and they manage the estate of a person, so they have the full legal and financial ability to manage that estate, but they do so with the mandate that they're doing it for the benefit of the principal or the person who's being cared for by that trusteeship arrangement. So if your wife was in need of care and it had gone to a guardianship hearing at QCAT, it is entirely possible that they could say that her estate would be managed by the Queensland state for her best interest. So that could involve selling properties to fund her care home, or buying wheelchairs or other bits and pieces from the estate and making decisions, etc., about where she lives. But this is normally done in an open environment, and those decisions can also be brought for challenge if circumstances change since they were originally made.
Yeah, this is... my wife was forced into a nursing home and she was not looked after there, and she was dead 3.5 months later, mate.
Well, that's very hard to see, but any will she had after that would be valid. The state just doesn't take her money once she dies.
No, this is before, mate.
Yeah.
She was forced to put into... I was forced to put her into a nursing home, and 3.5 months later, the nursing home, all right, without saying too much, she had falls, and it wasn't anything to do with the falls. It was just that she wasn't looked after properly, and she was put down in 5 hours straight.
Well, that's absolutely traumatic for you. For our other listeners, if something like this happens, I would recommend you get independent legal advice while it's going on to make sure your loved ones are cared for.
Thank you very much, John. All right, if you'd like your question answered just like John and Ron prior to that, please give us a call. Couple of minutes left in the program. We've probably got time enough for one more question. 0755 208888. All right, we were talking QCAT. What does proper service actually mean?
Well, we touched on that briefly, but proper service is making sure that the documents that you've sent from QCAT are properly brought to their attention. So their email address, dropped at their place of work, they've actually acknowledged that they've received it, because it's only fair you'd want it if someone was launching an action against you that you're aware of what's going on. Now, one of the things I'd like to talk about before we wrap up today is about lawyers and QCAT. One of the questions I get is about the price of lawyers in QCAT, and a lot of people say that why won't lawyers take some QCAT matters? So from a lawyer's perspective, there's 3 reasons why a lawyer mightn't take on a QCAT matter. First of all, not every QCAT matter allows lawyers. You have to actually seek leave for a lawyer to appear. So they might do all the prep and then be told they can't turn up, which is very frustrating. Secondly, the economics. The lawyers don't necessarily want to see you out of pocket. They don't want to take all of your winnings or the possibility that you lose and then you're out of pocket for something that's relatively a small amount of money. So they want to save everyone frustration in the process and help where they can. And third is on evidence. So sometimes they may look at your case and say, look, this just isn't strong enough to justify the investment, and we must give you full and frank advice, even if it's not necessarily what you want to hear. And so if you don't have the case that looks good, they might say, well, you might be better off running this yourself rather than bringing us in and then having to deal with it later. However, as I said earlier, there might be a middle ground. Instead of having a lawyer run everything for you, you might want to get yourself prepared, ready to go, and then just seek a lawyer's assistance just to look over it and make sure that you're filling the form in the correct way and making sure that you've structured your argument in a logical sequence.
Look, it's interesting because you do hear from some, at times, it's the principle of the matter, not what it costs me or what I'm going to get in return. But I'm sure that there is a limit to the principle.
Absolutely. Yes, principle is good until the bills get sent out, and then that principle washes away sometimes.
All right, final comments, Andrew.
Again, I would strongly recommend that people consider QCAT when they're feeling frustrated about something. Look at the website and see what you need to do to be able to launch a QCAT action. It isn't that hard. People do it successfully every day by themselves. And a lot of the time, there's a lot of money out there and a lot of frustration where you can actually get some justice yourself.
Good on you, Andrew. Very good and very informative information. I'd like to thank all of the callers this morning. It is a short week, so enjoy the next 4 days and then we get another 2 off.
We'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week.
You've been listening to Legal Matters, proudly brought to you by our trusted sponsor, Bell and Senior Lawyers. Call them today for all your legal needs on 07 55 32 8777. A copy of this and past programs and all relevant resources will be available for you to replay or download on bellsenior.com.au and 4crb.com.
4CRB local news from the pages of the Gold Coast Bulletin and independent sources.
Making news in this bulletin, construction begins on Surf Lifesaving Base and Burleigh Head's late night support service to be extended. Good morning, I'm Robin Hyland. Extensive damage has been caused to an Arundel car wash business after a car was deliberately rammed into the building and then set alight on Brisbane Road early this morning. Police have declared the area a crime scene while they continue to investigate the suspicious fire. They are also appealing for witnesses. Construction has begun on a new purpose-built surf lifesaving base on the Spit. The $2.74 million Surf Lifesaving Queensland complex will become the operational home for the organisation and a staging area for rescue craft. The 2-storey building is on Muriel Henchman Drive, just north of SeaWorld. It will provide permanent infrastructure for rescue watercraft logistics and storage, along with dedicated space for training and emergency management. And finally, a program to tackle alcohol youth violence has been extended for another year with the funding boost from the state government launched last November. The Burleigh Heads Late Night Support Services has already recorded interactions with almost 8,000 people. While the program is still officially in a trial phase, the state government has committed almost $250,000 to extend the venture until at least April 2027, operating every Friday and Saturday night from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Stay on top of local news with our next bulletin at 10:30 a.m.